Shongwe, in a moment, we'll speak to the Deputy Director General for Technology Innovation, Mmboneni Muofhe, to talk about the control of South Africa's space agency, which is obviously not, an easy task. What does that even mean? And, what does that entail from a government perspective? And we will obviously be talking to him about that. Remember, we spoke to him when we were celebrating National Science Week in the Eastern Cape not so long ago. No, in fact, it was in the Western Cape. We're at the University of the Western Cape not so long ago. Now we're back here celebrating National Space Week, which let me give you a bit of background to say that it was declared by the United Nations General Assembly back in 1999, and then South Africa in fact started celebrating it only in 2005, and since then there's been lots of celebrations, and we're going to talk about what does this actually mean. Let me bring the Deputy Director General in for Technology and Innovation, Mmboneni Muofhe. Good morning, welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners as well.
Let's talk about Space Week. What are we talking about? To ordinary South Africans like myself, they hear this word Space Week. What are we talking about?
Yeah, basically we're celebrating the first man who went to space many years ago, and what we're trying to do now is to remember that also, but to reflect on the good things that have happened from us having been able to explore the space since then.
Talk to us about the role of the Department of Science and Technology in these celebrations, in also alleviating inequality, poverty, and those sort of challenges.
Yeah, so the Department of Science and Technology reignited the space ambitions of South Africa a couple of years back. You may recall the launch of the satellite in 2009. We have since launched another small satellite. We're working on other satellites. But the role in poverty alleviation is really around the issue of planning. As people will see the service delivery issues around water, sanitation and electricity, and the thing is the planning thereof is very much done through assistance of space, because you are able to map all these various settlements to see where they are growing into, and then to decide if you are ready to do services, where should this be coming from. And that's the one thing. But the other thing also is we just come out of elections in August. The planning thereof is very much helped through space sciences. For example, for us to really decide as to how many voting stations there are going to be and where, this is really based on your mapping of various settlements and their growth. So space really is very crucial in our everyday life. I'm not going to talk about the role in communications. What we're doing here, if we didn't have space, it wouldn't be happening. So that's really the value of space in our everyday life.
What space, and excuse the pun, does South Africa in particular occupy in the global environment, given the fact that, we've just, we're late bloomers, if so to speak?
Yeah, South Africa is very peculiar in the sense that we may be late bloomers, we may be not having the relative critical mass, but we've got interesting pockets of excellence. So, for example, here where we're staying, a lot of international space missions are actually supported from here. So, if we were not in existence, there could be a lot of issues around other countries that are involved in space. So, you talk about whether it's the USA, etc. So, we are quite involved there. And you might have and you'll know a little bit later today when you interview other colleagues of mine, that we are working on nanosatellite programs. And part of that is that the technology that is getting into those nanosatellites is now being exported to other countries. So that just shows you that we are a country that has really got a space. It might be a very small one, but it's a very sort of specialized one that we participate in.
Speak to us about the launch in Subandila, the set, and can we look forward to more of those launches?
We can look forward to more of the launches. We are now in the process of another satellite build program, and we also are building other small satellites as well. So between now and 2019-2020, we definitely would have the launch of a big satellite and small of maybe 2 or so smaller satellites.
Let's talk about the place that we're in. I mean, the first thing I saw when we're driving in was that it's a national key point. And, I really didn't know that this place really existed. Talk to us about the work being done by the space agency.
So I've spoken about the support for various missions, which means the launches that the other countries do, even our own satellites. So this is basically in South Africa and maybe even also in the Southern Hemisphere, one of the engines of control. So this is really where all the imageries will get downloaded. So it really is sitting here where it is sitting is a very special place. It's not just about the animals and these big things that you see here are doing a good job. They are tracing and tracking some of the satellites as we speak.
Can we develop a satellite industry in South Africa?
We've got a very interesting satellite program. I think when we started with initially in the late 90s with a satellite that was launched from Stellenbosch University called SANSA, we really started building a good critical mass of human capital. So there were a number of people that were trained to manufacture satellite. And from that, we were able to manufacture Sumbandira. And we are now beginning to continue to grow that. So we do have a lot of capabilities that we have actually built. And people must understand that the satellite building capability is really very rare. It's not very many countries. There are very many countries who are active in space environment, but they actually don't manufacture their own satellites, and we do. So I think it is important to really acknowledge that the South African government has really made its investment. We need to invest even more, but we are really positioning ourselves as big players in this industry. And the industry, as I mentioned, since then we've started to have a number of companies in the space sector that are beginning to service some international markets. So we are indeed a growing country in terms of space industry.
Speaking of countries, let's talk about the continent and the role that South Africa plays. How do we get the rest of the continent to play a part in what we are trying to do?
We've been very involved in the development of the space policy in the continent. And basically, this is really to make sure that we develop as a continent, because we cannot just develop alone. So we are working very closely, and there are discussions within the AU. They've got this concept of Pan-African universities. And now South Africa will be hosting the Pan-African University in Space Sciences. So that means it provides us an opportunity to really contribute much more effectively than we've initially been doing. But ultimately, what you also hear when you talk about the nanosatellite program at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, you will hear that a number of students that are being trained there are actually coming from other African countries. So we are making that contribution already.
All right, sir, thank you so much for talking to us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Right. A man who knows all about technology information, because he's the Deputy Director General Mmboneni Muofhe in the Department of Science and Technology. All right, you might be wondering what we're doing here. We're celebrating National Space Week, and we are at the Hartbees Hoek. I keep wanting to say Hartbeespoort, but it is Hartbees Hoek near Krugersdorp. This is where the celebrations are taking place. It is a national key point, the National Space Agency. All right, let's take a quick ad break. We're back after this. Stay with us.